Let me know when we're live, and I'll just go straight to Chloe for details on how to participate, and then we'll call to order.
Chloe, going to read it, and I'll have it on the screen.
Thank you. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. All right. So we are going live.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting of Capitola City Council. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to staff to have Chloe read some information about how to participate in tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Welcome to the Capitola City Council meeting. In accordance with the current Santa Cruz County Health Order and the Governor's Executive Order N2920, this meeting is not physically open to the public. Council and staff are meeting via Zoom, and there are several ways for the public to watch and participate. As always, this City Council meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable TV Channel 8 and will be rebroadcast on the following Wednesday at 8 a.m. and on Saturday following the first rebroadcast at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Our technician tonight is Kingston Rivera. Thank you, Kingston. If you are watching on Community TV and would instead prefer to join the Zoom webinar, please visit the City of Capitola homepage and click on City Council Meeting under Upcoming Events as you see on the screen. As a webinar attendee, your microphone is muted for the entire meeting unless you request to be unmuted during a public comment period. You do not need a microphone, camera, screen, or computer. If you only want to listen to the meeting is accessible by landline or mobile phone. To join this webinar using a telephone only, dial any of the following numbers now shown on the screen. The webinar ID is also provided. Remember that the mayor will announce the public comment period for each item. There are several ways to make a public comment. If you are a Zoom webinar attendee, simply click Raise Your Hand and wait to be unmuted by our moderator. If you've called into Zoom by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be unmuted. To email a comment, send your email to the address shown on the screen. One comment, verbally or by email, per person, per item is allowed. If you send more than one email about the same item, the last received will be read and displayed. Comments received outside the public comment period will not be included in the record. Thank you for attending this Capitola City Council meeting. Mayor Peterson, I'll turn back to you to call the meeting to order.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Bertrand.
Present.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Here.
Councilmember Story.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brooks.
I think I saw her here earlier, but I think she might be having connectivity issues.
Okay. We'll just say remote for now. And Mayor Peterson.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
and the
of
United
the United States of America
and to the
and to the republic
for which it
stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
All right. Are there any additional materials for tonight's meeting?
Yes, we have. 2 public comment emails were sent regarding item 6C for lifeguards, the desire for lifeguards. There's also a revised staff report regarding item 7C, and there were revised supporting documents sent for item 7D.
Great, thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
Staff has no changes.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll now go to public, oh, no? Okay, we'll now go to public comment. Tonight, this is the opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. So I'll turn it over to our moderator. I'm not sure, I think that's Larry this evening. Is he with us?
Yes, that's correct. I'm here. I don't have a camera tonight, but
Okay.
I do not see anyone with a hand raised on the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
I do see one public comment for email from email for this public comment. So I will try and get this running again. So share screen. Sorry.
Dear Mayor and Council, I want to share the City of Capitola's response rates to the 2020 census. Currently, Capitola has a response rate of 64.1% and the County of Santa Cruz has a response rate of 66.5%. Census results will inform how hundreds of billions of dollars are allocated to our communities in areas such as housing, food assistance, and health care. We are urging local governments to engage and encourage their residents to self-response at 2020census.gov or call 844-468-2020. It has never been easier to respond on your own to the 2020 census, whether online, over the phone, or by mail, all without having to meet a census taker. I appreciate the City of Capitola passing a resolution last year to support the 2020 census. Enumerators are scheduled to start going to households that have not responded in August. Your help in boosting self-response prior to that date would be appreciated. Thank you for your time and engagement. Kindly, Tori Del Favero.
Tori Del Favero, Partnership Specialist.
Is that all of our emailed public comment for this evening?
I think that must be
I will
it.
take that as a yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that is it. There's no more emails for just public comment.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to City Council and staff comments. We'll start with staff. Does any staff have any comments for this evening?
I don't think we have any updates for you tonight other than the regular agenda items later on this evening.
Great, thank you. And we'll go to City Council for comments. I see Councilmember Bertrand has his hand up.
Yeah, earlier this week I met with SEIU Labor regarding a sanitation labor issue.
Thank you for that update, Councilmember Bertrand. Councilmember Bottorff.
Thank you, Mayor. Really quick, I just want to thank the citizens of Capitola that have been patient with the construction that's been going on, especially on Capitola Avenue with some sewer repair and on Park Avenue. I know the impact of cars in the neighborhoods can be bothersome, but both of those jobs are completed, and I think in a pretty fast time, so those two streets are back to normal, and I appreciate the patience of everybody in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Brooks.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to report out that I would like to encourage our citizens of Capitola to continue to wear their masks out in the public. Also, I'd like to touch on that I attended the Black Lives Matters March here in the city, and it was a beautiful thing to see. It was highly attended, and there was wonderful speakers from all over the county who really addressed the issues that we're seeing safe. There are a couple of things that I'd also like to request staff to bring forward at a future agenda, as a future agenda item. One of them would be to bring back at a future meeting the possibility of obtaining the title for the Escalona Road extension. Also, there is the DOJ has released tobacco enforcement funding with a deadline of August 7th. I believe it was sent to a few of our staff, but I would be really interested in looking at that, especially since we just passed the ordinance for the anti-vaping. And also, the League of Cities released a report and referenced a notice of funding, or a NOFA, in regards to the home key grants that our city might be able to apply for as well. So those are just a few things I'd like to have staff to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Brooks. And then I would just like to make a couple quick comments. As Vice Mayor Brooks mentioned, it's incredibly critical that we continue to wear our masks and observe social distancing during this time. If anyone saw the press conference with our county health officer today, the Santa Cruz County has been flagged due to our rising case counts. I believe about a month ago we had something like 300 cases, and as of today we have 848, I believe it was. So because of how rapidly our case numbers are going up in the county, we have been flagged. If the county stays on that flagged list for 3 days, we then go to a monitoring list. After 3 days on that monitoring list or watch list, the state will create a new health order for our county, and it will require additional closures. So please do keep in mind the importance of social distancing, of wearing masks. During the press conference today, the county health officer acknowledged that while people were concerned that some of the protest marches would lead to a rise in cases, that none of our current cases have been traced back to those marches, likely because there was such a high number of people wearing masks during those activities. So please do keep that in mind as we move forward, so that we can see our way out of this. Additionally, as was mentioned in public comment, 2020 census is incredibly important. If I remember correctly, each person that fills out the census could bring approximately $2,000 in federal funding to our district, and it additionally determines the funding for our schools, for our communities, and also determines our representation and our lines for representation in our district. So please do fill that out. It's incredibly important. Everyone counts. Children count. Your immigration status is not an issue. You just fill it out and you count. So please do that. And thank you to the resident that brought that important issue to light during public comment this evening. I'm going to move on to item 6, our consent calendar. These items will be voted on by one motion, and the form listed below. Before I take it to public comment on our consent, I'll ask if there's any council members that are interested in pulling any items. Seeing none, we will go to public comment on the consent calendar, and then we'll return for a vote. Larry, can you let us know if there's any public comment for the consent calendar?
I do not see any hands raised, and I do not see any emails for the consent calendar.
Great, thank you. In that case, I'll bring it back to council for a motion and a vote.
Motion to move the consent calendar. Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Bottorff and a second from Councilmember Bertrand. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Councilmember Bertrand.
Aye.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Aye.
Councilmember Story.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brooks.
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, general government public hearings for tonight. 7A, 207 Oakland Avenue appeal. I'll bring it over to staff for a staff report.
All right. Can everybody see me? All right, let's see.
You're good.
Let me get the presentation up. Okay. The item before you, good evening, council members, and sorry, it's my first presentation here, but the item before you is an appeal of a planning commission denial of a design permit, secondary dwelling unit, and fence exception to remodel 3 existing residential structures, including an addition of 131 square feet to one structure located at 207 Oakland Avenue in the R1 zoning district. The proposal reduces the number of dwelling units to comply with current zoning standards from 1 duplex and 2 single-family residences to 1 single-family residence, 1 secondary dwelling unit, and 1 detached living space. Following the Planning Commission denial, the applicant updated their plans to remove the fence exception and add landscaping along the frontage. The application went before the Planning Commission on June 4th, 2020, and was denied as both motions for approval resulted in a tie and therefore failed. The city received an appeal to City Council on June 11th, 2020. The existing site layout at 207 Oakland includes 1 duplex and 2 single-family residences, as seen here. The existing multifamily use located within the R1 zoning district is considered a non-conforming use. The non-conforming use must be discontinued 50 years from the date of the activity became non-conforming, which is on September 27th, 2029, unless granted an extension by City Council. The owner opted to correct the non-conforming use rather than ask for an extension. The proposed site layout, as seen here, the applicant is proposing to convert existing structures to 1 single-family residence, 1 secondary dwelling unit, and 1 detached living space to bring the property into compliance. In these next slides, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the applicant's proposal. Seen here in yellow are the 4 existing parking spaces along Oakland Avenue. No additional parking is required due to the limited size of the addition. This is the design of the proposed single-family residence. The Spanish-style design features clay tile roof, stucco siding, and a mix of rectangular and arched windows. A rear second-story deck will be converted into enclosed space, but the front second-story deck facing Oakland Avenue is to remain. These architectural details are carried out through all 3 structures. This is the design of the proposed detached living space. And this is the design of the proposed secondary dwelling unit. As you can see, the Spanish design elements are carried through each of the 3 structures. During the Planning Commission hearing, commissioners raised several concerns. Among them, 1, the applicability of the Mello Act to the intent of Capitol's affordable housing ordinance, and 3, the design considerations with respect to the neighborhood. The Mello Act seeks to preserve affordable housing in coastal zones by prohibiting local governments from authorizing conversion or demolition of existing units, existing affordable housing units, excuse me. However, the Mello Act specifies that no replacement units are required when the project involves 10 or fewer units in more than one structure. The subject property contains 4 units in 3 structures. Therefore, the Mello Act's limitations on the removal of units and replacement requirements are not applicable. The Capitola Inclusionary Housing Ordinance was also referenced as further justification against approving the project. Commissioner Newman referenced the findings of the housing ordinance to illustrate how decreasing density on this site is counter to the stated goals of the city's inclusionary housing ordinance. Further concerns were raised with respect to the Mediterranean style, the wall, and the entry gate. Within the new zoning code, or within the zoning code, there are specific considerations when reviewing a design permit. In regards to architectural character, the council must consider the suitability of the building for its purpose and the appropriate use of materials to ensure compatibility. Commissioner Ruth raised concerns with compatibility of the design within the neighborhood. In reviewing the appeal, the council should also consider the city's general plan and local coastal plan. The general plan land use element describes the Depot Hill neighborhood as detached single-family homes on relatively small lots that create an intimate feel. A high concentration of historic single-family homes, a variety of architectural styles, and a sidewalk exemption allowance contributes to the neighborhood's coastal village feel. The land use plan within Capitola's local coastal plan creates the policy for new development on Depot Hill to maintain the special character and to be designed for compatibility with the scale and architecture of the area. Finally, following Planning Commission denial, the applicant submitted revised plans to reduce the wall height to 6 feet to comply with fence standards. The revisions also include a landscape strip around the parking area and new plantings throughout. The green areas shown are the areas that have been revised for landscaping, and they are visible in front of the wall. With reduced fence height, the application complies with all development standards of the R1 zoning district. With that, staff recommends City Council uphold the appeal and approve the project based on conditions of approval and findings.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions from council members? Sorry, hold on, I didn't have the participants bar up to see if there's any hands raised. Okay, forgive me because I didn't see whose hand went up first, so I'm just going to start at the top and go down. So we'll start with Council Member Story.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Sean. That was very well done for your first time. I wanted to ask about the front wall, if you could go back to that slide. And particularly, I wanted to ask about the entryway. And I don't know how that's categorized. Is that part of the wall? Or is that a separate structure? And how is that height permitted in relationship to the wall?
Yes, so that was actually reviewed separate from the fence standards. It is considered an accessory structure, and as you noted, it is well above the wall height. However, one thing to take note, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the site plan, is the fact that this structure, this accessory structure, is behind the front setback. So as long as it actually doesn't go over the 15-foot height limitation, it's within the R1 zoning district standards. It was calculated as a part of the floor area as well, so this was given a review that would have been similar to a minor design review.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go to Councilmember Bosworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have, I had a question about for the city attorney, but I think Sean covered that in the presentation with regard to the Mellow Act. So I just have one question. Sean, I know there's lots of codes and ordinances that I'm not so familiar with, but I looked, but could you tell me what code exists that does not allow for gentrification in Capitola?
Could you say that last part again?
I want to know what code there is that says that gentrification is not allowed in Capitola.
There's no code section like that that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bertrand.
Yeah, so in the living, Sean, thanks for the presentation. It was very good. I appreciate that. In the living quarters, I noted in the discussion there's only a bathroom going to be in there. Can this be converted to a full living quarter in the future?
Are you referring to the detached living space?
Yes, living space, excuse me. I mean, would we be able to do that? Because we can only have one ADU that's detached as far as I know.
I don't believe you could get a permit to convert that into an additional accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, any additional questions from council? Seeing none, seeing none, we will bring this to public comment. Public comment for this item is now open, and I will turn it over to our moderator to call on attendees and those who have sent in emails.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. We have Derek Von Alstein. He is the person with a hand up in the Zoom meeting, so I will allow him to talk at this point.
Good evening, Council. This is Derek Van Alstein. I am the designer of this project and many others. And I'd like to thank staff for their hard work on helping us get this project to comply. This is a very interesting project in that it's the buildings as they are very run down. They're hard to deal with. I think we've come up with a plan that'll work and that'll fit in nicely with the neighborhood. The one thing that I would impress upon the council is that when it went to planning commission, we only had 4 commissioners. So we didn't want to have a case where it went around and around. We didn't want to have it come to council and then go back to planning because it would be in the same condition because we had 1 commissioner that had to recuse himself. So that being said, I think that we've shown in the revisions that we've provided that we put extra care into doing the landscape to soften the hardscape in front of the wall and to soften the wall itself, and the reduction of the wall all serve to help the project fit in and cushion the surfaces. So the other piece to this is that, with having everything back that far from the street, and it in fact does a nice job just in the setback of softening the impact. If this were a single family parcel, you'd probably be building quite a few more square feet because it would be allowed. So it's not an intense use of the site, and I think it's a good redevelopment of the site. And in terms of the architectural style, you have the Venetian, you have the Casablanca on the corner. You have there are a plethora of Mediterranean buildings. The Risbon Mansion, one of them, the Venetian, of course. That's all part of Capitola's history, and there's lots of room in Capitola for different styles. There are different styles all throughout Capitola. That means my time's up, and if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Larry, it doesn't look like we have any additional attendees with their hands raised.
I do not see any. We do have a few emails,
Okay.
and I will start, and I will try and share as quick as I can.
I'm Jan Gallatley. My husband and I just purchased our home at 502 Escalona Drive in Depot Hill. I heard of the proposed changes to the multi-unit dwelling on Oakland Ave. I strongly oppose to the tall fence out in front of the property with parking spaces in front of it. This will look like an apartment building. The style of the proposed fence doesn't look or feel at all beachy. I don't feel the style fits in with the neighborhood at all. I don't think enclosing properties is the direction that homes should take. I am opposed to the fence being built in the manner proposed. Jan Gallatley. Jan Gallatley Interiors. Diablo Design Group. 1.
Okay, I'm going for the next one. Sorry. It's giving me a message I've never seen before. I apologize.
Dear Sir or Madam, I live at 211 Oakland Avenue next door to the subject property. We have been at 211 Oakland for 7 years, and not only love Depot Hill, we've successfully encouraged 3 couples/best friends to buy homes here. The neighborhood is unique in many wonderful ways. We knew when we purchased our home that 207 had, and would likely always have, a 2-story structure and another single-story one on our joint lot line. Don't have to like it, but can't complain about it. However, the structures next door are at least reasonably consistent with the overall neighborhood, and the parking in front of the structures but on the lot services the lot well. The proposed remodel/renovation poses 3 key negatives I hope the council will consider and reject. 1. Converting a 4-structure compound that more or less blends into the neighborhood into a Mediterranean set of structures will make it stand out starkly both visually in and of itself and versus the overall optics of the neighborhood. 2. A large wall across the front would worsen that considerably, and be highly unusual. And 3. The wall will likely push the 3 to 5 cars off in there into the street. I understand the desire of the new owners to make this property their own, but this plan negatively impacts the neighborhood unnecessarily. Thank you for your consideration. Rex Jackson. 211 Oakland Avenue. My name is Elizabeth Jackson. I live at 211 Oakland Avenue. At the June 4th meeting I made a comment about the Mediterranean style of the proposed house and that it does not fit the style in Depot Hill. One of the council members contradicted that, saying there are many Mediterranean style houses. Since then, I have walked all the walkable streets in Depot Hill and found the mass majority to be wood style siding or shingle. I found 26 that are stucco and wood, including 207 Oakland Avenue. I found only 304 Grand Avenue, that is a similar Mediterranean style is proposed and it does not fit in with its neighbor's wood style. So once again I want to comment that this style of house is not appropriate for Depot Hill. In my walk around I also saw no tall solid walls in front of houses in Depot Hill. There are a few hedges that have grown tall but none are in combination with tall solid walls. Most houses have either no fence at all in front or they have a low fence around 3 feet tall and many are picket fences. I object to the wall being solid and tall because what will be seen from the street will look like an apartment building with parking in front up to the wall. The residents have 4 cars and no covered parking, so all will be parked in front of the property or on the street. The architect is clearly getting around the Capitola 3 feet 6 inches front fence rule by having the wall be slightly further back from the street than the front of the house. This is a fine point that may let them build a 6 8-foot wall, but the spirit of the rule is clearly meant to have front fences and walls limited to 3 feet 6 inches. Therefore, I strongly object to allowing 2 extra feet of wall to be solid as requested. Perhaps as a compromise they can step the wall down from 6 to 3 or 4 feet at the gate and then have the gate be 3 feet 6 inches tall. That would give it a more welcoming appearance. Thank you, Elizabeth Jackson.
Okay, I have one more for this item.
To whom it may concern. I am responding to the appeal notice received regarding the denied design permit request at 207 Oakland Avenue discussed at the last public hearing. As mentioned in my previous email, I do not believe a Mediterranean design and solid 8-perimeter wall is conducive to the eclectic beach community of Depot Hill. Although the appeal mentions that Depot Hill has several similar style homes, I personally am not familiar with many. Additionally, it was my understanding that the front fence permit standards state a maximum height of 3 feet 6 inches. I am sure that the proposed home will be beautifully designed, however, with the tall 8-solid barrier and parking lot facing the front, it will not be at all attractive or community-minded, which is why it is important to maintain our front fence standards. I hope that you will consider my comments and deny the design permit as currently proposed. Sincerely, Andrea Dorman.
Okay, that appears to be all the public comments we have for that item. Wait, hold on, let me check real quick, I may be wrong. Oh wait, no, we did get one more in, my apologies.
I have looked at application for fences and it requires only 3/6 for front yards. This exception for this property is way over that. Ann Greenanger, 212 Oakland Avenue, Capitola 9.
Okay, that looks like all the public comments for this item.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll bring this item back to council for deliberation and a vote. If there's any council members that would like to comment, feel free to use the raise hand button and we'll get going on a discussion. Councilmember Bottorff, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say I'm very troubled by this appeal for many reasons. And first thing I want to do is I want to apologize to the owners that submitted this because I'm sorry they had to go through this project. I got on the council 8 years ago, and one of the main reasons I ran is that there was a project being built on Depot Hill. It's the church on the corner of Escalona and I'm going to say Oakland. I mean, I had that right. But it's the church building that I believe turned out to be one of the most beautiful remodels or reconstructions done in town. There were people on the planning commission then that instead of looking at the codes and ordinances that were available, took more of their personal opinions to stop that project. What ended up happening there was there's a wall that happens to be built all the way across that property. And I still say it's one of the most beautiful buildings in the city. And that motivated me to have one of my standards is I'm here to protect, protect the rights of homeowners and what they do with their property. If we let public opinion sway what people did with their property, people would find all kinds of things wrong. Another note that was made was Commissioner Ruth noted that the site improvements did not support the Mediterranean design because it doesn't fit in the neighborhood and it doesn't exist throughout the city. So I went out and presented a little PowerPoint, and if I can get the assistance from staff, I'd like to run that now and show a little survey of Mediterranean homes in Capitola. Is that possible?
This is Sean. I'm about to put that up for you.
Thank you, Sean. one first picture is the one located in Depot Hill. Oops. Yeah, the first picture, upper left corner, is in Depot Hill. The second home next to it, again in Depot Hill. The third picture and fourth is of another house, again in Depot Hill. You get over to the pictures on the right, that's Sanmar, and Sanmar. And I think there's one other slide, maybe two, Sean. Yeah, that's all Sanmar there. And then here we have these other four on the left are all in the jewel box. The other two are two more in the jewel box and one in Riverview. Next slide. And I guess you could say that there's no Mediterranean in Capitola. Oops, maybe the Venetians, maybe the most famous buildings in this town. So for someone to say that Mediterranean doesn't exist is ludicrous. The other picture on the left I want you to pay attention to, on the right, I'm sorry, is there's a lot of people that are eclectic with their homes. I just put this on there because it happens to be a home, the jewel box, that somebody attached butterflies to the wall because that was their way of expressing themselves. And I think that when neighbors come out and are punitive against other neighbors because they dislike something, I think what the Planning Commission needs to adhere to is the sets of codes and ordinances and apply them and keep their personal bias out of this. As was mentioned by the architect, I believe one of the reasons that the problems with this project failing was one of our planning commissioners had to recuse himself. I think our councils and our commissions are strongest when we have a full vote. I feel pretty sure that if there would have been a full vote, we wouldn't be having this hearing today. And I think there's one more picture, Sean, if I'm not mistaken.
This is the last slide.
Okay, there was another picture there, it didn't make it, but I'll just go ahead and tell you about the house. It was a house up in the jewel box. The entire front yard is landscaped with cactus. I think we're all familiar with it. It's just, you may not like what your neighbor does, but there are certain rights that you're entitled to as a homeowner, and that's my main reason. So I will be supporting this. In fact, I'd like to make a motion that we support the appeal of the owners. I'd also like to include in that they not be charged the fee, as I believe that this was done inappropriately by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Bottorff. We have a motion and a second. We'll continue conversation with Councilmember Story.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Before I began, I want to disclose that, I had walked over to the property just yesterday, and I had an opportunity to speak with the appellants about that project. So I just want to disclose that I have been on site, and I'd like to address now I think three issues that have come up concerning the project. One is concerning the reduction in affordable housing. As Sean already mentioned, the Mello Act doesn't apply. I don't think our inclusionary ordinance would apply in this situation. However, as I understand from the staff report, what has caused the reduction in the amount of housing, even if there is, the number of units that have been reduced is very minor, but even to that extent is due to our own zoning ordinance, which prohibited the applicants from putting in a multifamily, in other words, replacing what was there. So I don't think the applicants should be penalized for our own ordinance. And I think I have a greater concern about the expiration of the non-conforming uses on Depot Hill, because there are several multifamily apartments, dwellings here that will expire in 2029. And I think on a housing public policy basis, the council needs to contend with that issue, or we're going to end up losing many other affordable housing on Depot Hill. concerning the style, well, I don't think I could better what Councilman Bortoff showed us. And I just want to confirm that on Depot Hill, there are many homes that are in the Mediterranean stucco Spanish style. It's not a majority of them, but there are sufficient numbers that here. Our general plan recognizes that Depot Hill has a variety of architectural styles, and our local coastal plan requires that new developments be compatible with the architecture of the area. And I certainly could not find that this particular style is not in keeping with the architecture of the area. It matches several other homes. And then I also wanted to comment about, because many of the neighbors raised concerns about the wall up in front. And I'll say probably personally, that's not a favorite aspect of the project from my personal point of view, but I'm not here to project onto the property owners my personal point of view. What my requirement is to look at what our zoning codes allow and what they don't allow. And it so happens that the zoning code, because the wall is behind the setback line, it is allowed to be up to 6 feet. And I had asked the question about the entrance, and that is considered a separate accessory structure, and which is allowed to be at that height. So, because of that, even though I personally don't care for it, for all the reasons that some of the neighbors mentioned, that certainly can't be a basis for me to vote to deny this appeal. So I'm going to support the motion, and I do support waiving the appeal fee on the applicants. And so that will conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Story. Councilmember Bertrand?
Thank you, Mary. I too went out there, and I've known of that house because, I've probably knocked on most homes in this town a couple of times, like many of us who've run for city council, and I've known of that house. And I think the upgrades that they're going to be making is going to be a great improvement to the neighborhood there. I think it'll look so much better. So from that standpoint, I think in general neighbors will like it when it gets completed. I talked to 2 neighbors. I didn't get any sense that there was a controversy. I was informed about other problems in the neighborhood, though, and I kept trying to steer back to the project at hand, and they were fine, or they didn't think of anything that they had to complain about. But I didn't do a complete survey. I just talked to people that are on that block. So from a standpoint of empathy, I could see this gate and the entranceway for some people to be an issue, although I've seen many similar things around Capitola. But this is a family that's moving in. I believe their 2 sons are going to be there, and I think it's like a family compound. I know many houses in Capitola that are like that, where, and that's very Spanish. I've traveled in Mexico, lived there multiple times, various short periods of time, and there's many compounds like that where it's a family affair, basically. You go in the main gate, and I think there's many examples out around the world. So it's not unusual. It may be a little bit different than what is generally here in Capitola. But I think that's why they're doing this. So I think that it's going to be a very nice home when it's completed, and the family is going to greatly enjoy it. And I hope the neighbors eventually welcome them as members of the neighborhood. Thank you. I will be supporting it, obviously.
Thank you, Councilmember Bertrand. Vice Mayor Brooks, do you have any comments? No? Okay. I have a question. So, and full disclosure, I'm well aware of the property because I lived on it 2 and a half or 3 years ago. I was at 207 Oakland, number 2, the back half of what is now the duplex. And my understanding was when those of us that lived there, we had to leave because they were remodeling, and then a new group of people, of renters, came in. So am I to understand now that the 4 units that are there now have renters in them and they will now be displaced? Is that my understanding? Does anyone know?
I can speak to that. During the public hearing at Planning Commission, the owner, I believe, spoke, and at that time there was only 1 unit that was being rented at the time. The other 3 were empty, and the 1 tenant that was renting had plans to move out this summer.
Okay, thank you. And so this will essentially no longer be multifamily housing. This will be a single-family dwelling, and the entire property and all of the dwelling units on it will be under one family, correct?
No.
That's not correct?
No.
That is correct. It'll be a single-family home with 1 family. They'll have a secondary dwelling unit that they're allowed to rent out to a separate entity, but it will no longer be a multifamily fourplex. So whether or not they rent out the secondary dwelling unit is up to them.
Okay, so in one, essentially, no matter how you word it, we are losing units for renters, correct?
2 units.
2 units for renters. Okay. All right. Well, I have to say I'm concerned that we're losing additional housing units. When I lived there, we joked and called it, my neighbors and I called it the compound, but the wall in front of it really does make it look like a compound. And to be quite honest, it reminds me of, I want to say it's on Portola. There's a house that you drive by and all you see from the street is a wall, and you can't even tell really that there's a house behind it. So it's concerning. I'm not a fan of the style. I'm concerned that we're losing housing that would otherwise be available. But I understand that, we're not making decisions based on our own opinions. So I'm disappointed, but I will support the motion. There's no additional comments. We have a motion and second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Bertrand.
Aye.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Aye.
Councilmember Story.
Aye.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Brooks.
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, we have item 6B, that's 7B. An update to the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Response Application.
Hey, Mayor, before you begin this item,
Yes.
I'd like to disclose that my wife's agency, Community Action Board, is one of the proposed applicants. So based on that, I have a conflict, and I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you, Councilmember Story.
Councilmember Story, all you need to do is mute us, and so that you can't hear the discussion if maybe you've already done that and you can't hear me, and then we'll just wave when we're ready to bring you back.
Okay, Sam, I don't mean to belay this, but are you saying that I didn't need to disclose?
No, I'm saying that if you're going to recuse yourself from this item in these days of Zoom, you don't have to physically leave the room. You just have to mute us. And
how to do it. I get it. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Peterson and City Council. For you tonight, I'm going to discuss the CDBG CD grant. On March 27, 2020, Congress passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act to support preparation for and response to the community impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. The state of California received approximately $19 million in CARES Act funding, Capitola is a non-entitlement community due to our population being less than 50,000 people. This is important to understand as entitlement communities are subject to oversight by HUD under the federal government. As a non-entitlement community, we're subject to the state standards and just the disbursement of funds for non-entitlement communities will be through the California Department of Housing and Community Development through CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Program. HCD has different guidance tied to the funding than the federal government. So many of the projects that you're hearing about our neighbors doing with this funding, when they have populations over 50,000, they have different regulations that they can work under. There will be 3 rounds of CDBG CV grants. The grant announcement identified up to $88,000 of available CDBG CV grants for the City of Capitola in the first round of funding. The city also has approximately $80,000 in CDBG program income funds. This money came from one down payment assistance loan that was recently paid off by the program participants. The CDBG program income funds may be utilized in response to COVID-19 pandemic on eligible grant activities. So that gives us more money to utilize on the first round. In total, we have approximately $168,000 of funds. The funds may be utilized for up to 3 CDBG activities, and also because we have the program income fund as well, we can do an additional program. Activities must be related to the preparation, prevention, response, and recovery of the COVID-19 pandemic in the immediate and medium-term response. Each round of funding is limited to the 3 CDBG activities. So in this slide, I have listed what qualifies as a CDBG activity. As you know, we put together an ad hoc committee made up of our mayor and vice mayor. They've met 3 times since the original resolution was adopted by the City Council. And during these meetings, have tried to prioritize activities for the first round of funding. During the second ad hoc meeting, the committee identified public services, including food and rental assistance, as well as economic development, business assistance, as a priority for the first round of funding. Details on the economic development program were published after the second ad hoc meeting. And unfortunately, the economic development program put in place by the state HCD is more restrictive than the program under the federal HUD. Under the federal HUD program, it allowed entitlement communities to provide funds to small businesses through grants. HCD is not allowing economic development grants. All economic development activities providing financial assistance to businesses require loans with underwriting. So Watsonville had a program of giving $2,000 per business to help with rental or utility coverage. To do underwriting for that would be a significant effort for a small amount of money. So within the standards that we'll be working under, each loan must aid a business for a minimum of 3 months and provide proof of retention of low and moderate income jobs. The underwriting requirements include documentation of 2019 profit and loss statements and must show impacts of COVID-19 and necessary funding to ensure the job retention. Currently, there is not a local economic development nonprofit with a program in place to administer such loans with the underwriting requirements. Staff is working with a local economic development nonprofit to establish a loan program with an underwriting partner, but the program is not yet established, and the goal is when you receive your funds is to get them out as soon as possible. So during the third ad hoc committee meeting, the group was told of this new challenge presented for the economic development funding. With the new information, the ad hoc committee recommended funding public service activities, including food and rental assistance for the first round, and then to focus on economic development, homeless services, and assistance for after-school programs during the second round. staff contacted local nonprofits that provide food distribution services and rental assistance to Capitola residents, requesting information on the need relative to COVID-19 pandemic. This slide shows the requested funds in the third column and the ad hoc committee recommendation on the last column. The one item that will not be fully funded is Liftline, or the two items, and Community Action Board. It is important to note the city provided Community Action Board with $25,000 in funds from the Housing Successor Agency Fund for fiscal year 2021, as we have historically done towards rental assistance. So for Community Action Board, the total funds that they will receive with this $20,000 grant and the $25,000 from our Housing Successor Fund is a total of $45,000. So it's close to the $50,000 that they were requesting. And the good news is when the needs came in, if you were to take the Liftline out of the equation, we were within $1,000 of meeting the needs of for food requests for Capitola residents in these three nonprofits that have supported our residents for a long time. So it's great to have this available funding come so close to the need. So this evening, staff is recommending that the council adopt a proposed resolution amending Resolution 4175 to revise the funding allocations between eligible activities and authorize the city manager to enter into sub-recipient agreements with Community Bridges, Gray Bears, Second Harvest Food Bank, and the Community Action Board. Thank you. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
All right. Vice Mayor Brooks, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Katie, can you just tell us when the next round or when we anticipate the next round of funding will come in and approximately how much we're anticipating?
So the next round, I actually spoke with Paul Ashby, our new consultant that's helping with CDBG grants, and he said there was no update on the exact timing of the next round, but the HCD mentioned they hope to have the next notice of funding availability out in about approximately 60 days. He said that through his work over the years with HCD, it's typically a little bit longer. So I'd say 60 plus days. And then the question about how much funding. In the second round, we're expecting to get more funding, but because we had our program income funds to tie into this, it won't be great. It most likely, I'm not sure, we won't know until the notice of the NOFA comes out. It'll tell us exactly, but it should be larger than the $88,000 that we saw in this first round.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions at this time from council members? Seeing none, we'll open public comment for this item. I'll turn it over to Larry to moderate our public comment.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor Peterson, and let me see if I have any emails. I do not see any emails either about this item.
Okay, great. With that, we will close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and a vote. Vice Mayor Brooks.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a comment. Katie, you had mentioned that we were looking at the possibility of putting some of the future dollars towards after-school programming, and I just wanted to offer some clarification that that it wouldn't just be that our thoughts were not just for the after-school program, but I just want to elaborate that it would be on early childhood and youth programming as a whole versus just specifically after-school programming. So I just want to offer some of that clarity.
Thank you.
Any additional comments? Seeing none, we will entertain a motion. Oh, hold on. Oh, Councilmember Bottorff, comments, motion?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bosworth and a second by Councilmember Bertrand. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Councilmember Bertrand.
Yes.
Councilmember Bosworth.
Aye.
Councilmember Story is recused. Vice Mayor Brooks.
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Mayor Peterson, for working with me on this. Aye.
Great. And Mayor Peterson.
Aye.
Great.
Motion carries unanimously amongst the council members voting, with one recusal for Councilmember Story. So if we can bring him back. There he is. Welcome, Councilmember Story. We will go now to item 7C, consider a proposal for an out-of-school time recreation program for the Blended Learning 2021 school year.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Peterson, council members. Let me take a minute to share my screen.
Councilmember Bosworth, can you put your hand down so that when we go back to comments, we'll have a clean slate, unless you're just dying to talk on this item already.
No, I do not. I'm sorry about that, Mayor.
No problem.
All right. So the item before you this evening is the out-of-school time recreation program. To begin with some background, so for the past school year, Recreation and the Soquel Union Elementary School District began a partnership to offer an after-school rec club that was hosted at New Brighton Middle School. This program was very successful, and we had the intent of continuing this program. However, the COVID-19 pandemic changed things, and it then created a high need for childcare programs for school-age children with the school closures, and then looking forward to medium-risk models. So currently, Recreation is operating 2 successful youth programs, summer programs, under the current child care guidance that is required for these programs to operate. And staff has been working with Soquel Union Elementary School District to identify what the child care needs would be for the coming school year. And in conjunction with those conversations, staff developed an out-of-school time program model for elementary and middle school age youth. This would include new job descriptions and pay schedule. Since, with an update, since the staff report was written the week prior, this week on Monday, Santa Cruz County Office of Education announced that Santa Cruz County meeting criteria to move on to the monitoring list, schools will start the year with distance learning. So originally, the staff report presented a blended learning model. And so what we are now looking at is that schools may reopen for in-person or blended learning instruction once Santa Cruz County numbers meet criteria for 14 consecutive days. In the construction of the staff report, the staff anticipated that there might be an additional school closure sometime during the operation of the out-of-school time programs, or OST programs. And at the moment, staff believes that child care programs will be able to operate. Things change pretty regularly these days, so we will see. But this presentation is going to focus on details of how the OST programs will operate with the current expectation that we're going back with distance learning and that they will be operating on a full-time schedule at the beginning of the school year. And when or if SoCal Union begins a blended learning model, then the OST programs will operate as detailed in the original staff report. So for current guidance for recreational programming / childcare, participants that are enrolled in program need to be placed in stable groups of no more than 12 children. Those stable groups cannot mix with any other group, and staff assigned to each group shall not mix with any other group. So all youth enrolled in a program and all staff need to remain stable. In the event that a group goes into an indoor space, there can only be one group in that indoor space, and if that room is scheduled for a second group to enter, complete sanitation needs to occur between the two groups. And then safe covering, social distancing, health screening, and hand hygiene protocols apply for these programs. So with that, the first OST program that I'm going to explain to you is the elementary age youth. And one of the significant factors with childcare at the moment is being able to identify a number of rooms in order to increase capacity. If you have one room, then you are only able to have a capacity of 12 in your program. So an aspect of this program has been to identify additional rooms, additional spaces that we would be able to expand to in order to increase the capacity. So for the elementary program, staff reached out and developed partnerships with Shore Life Community Church, as well as United Way First 5, that enables us to provide a larger capacity for elementary students. The current plan would have 4 groups of 12, one at Jade Street Community Center, one at United Way First 5, and 2 groups at Shore Life Community Church for a total of 48 SoCal elementary students. This might be able to be, the capacity might be able to be increased and potentially provide to Main Street Elementary as well if additional sites are identified. Each team or each pod will have a stable staff that will consist of a senior leader and a leader. We will be providing care from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And the program will cover morning distance learning. So all sites have internet access so that the students enrolled will be able to participate in their online distance learning. And then the program will also provide homework support, recreation activities, and healthy snacks to those enrolled. In the event that there's a shift to the blended learning model that was originally outlined in the staff report for the AM/PM 4-day stagger that SoCal Union was planning to offer, we would also be able to shift this program to match the blended learning that was originally detailed in the staff report. For the middle school OST program, we would be able to provide for 2 groups at the Jade Street Community Center for a total of 24 participants. So we might be able to increase the capacity of this if additional sites were identified. Each shift would have stable staff that would consist of a senior leader and a leader. And also we would be providing care from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday for this program. And again, we would have the morning distance learning and then switch to homework support, recreation activities, and a healthy snack. In the event that we shift to a blended learning model, the middle school was planned to have the AAB cohort 2-day rotation, and this program would be able to switch along with it. Also, in the original staff report, there was also a proposed more classic in-person after-school type program, but this model will not be available until we've shifted to a blended learning platform. So in the distance learning, an in-person after-school program just doesn't really work with the resources that we have available. Additionally, for OST programs, depending on enrollment or available sites, the middle school OST may experience changes. So, for example, it is possible that we might see a higher demand in elementary or a lower demand for middle school. We could potentially allocate one of the rooms that the middle school program is currently planned for to be for elementary if that was something that we saw in the request for demand. Recreation will offer a priority enrollment phase for essential workers as well as so-called union teachers. The distance learning model will not require transportation for elementary students, as was originally detailed in the staff report. So with this current distance learning model, staff will seek a contract with Enterprise when SoCal Union transitions to a blended learning model, hopefully at some point during the school year. And because the requirements for the stable groups, drop-in care is unfortunately not an option in any of these programs. So the consequences of providing these programs is that using the community center for them will prohibit adult classes to operate on the weekdays. In preparation for this, we surveyed class participants as well as instructors and received significant information that online is their preference at the time, that there is not a high interest in returning to in-person classes, whether they be indoors or outdoors, until the situation is safe for it. For this budget, adult classes also included a revenue of $250,000. Because of that, this budget figure will need to be revised downwards, and I believe will be done at a later meeting. Staff will evaluate conditions for adult classes should school return to a complete in-person learning model. Hopefully, the situation that if we're returning to complete in-person learning, it will also be the case that adult classes will be able to return to the community center safely. And the operation of the OST programs will prevent the community center from being used as a polling site in the upcoming presidential election. The upcoming election, the criteria for polling sites is different than it has been in past years, and it's actually planned to take place over 4 days. And some of those days are weekdays, which would overlap with this program. So in regards to scholarship, recognizing that there will be a need for scholarship, at the end of the school year, there were 2 sessions of the after-school rec club that were not able to operate due to the onset of the pandemic, and that fund has a remaining $3,944 in it. Around in May, Council allocated the remaining of the early childhood and youth TOT to summer youth program scholarships, and currently that fund has a remaining $4,560. And also, we had council previously had discussed the anticipated 2021 Early Childhood and Youth TOT Fund, which may be around $15,000. That was allocated to recreation. We had discussed several different types of categories that money could be directed to, and it could be directed to completely directed to scholarship. And if that was the choice, then the total potential funding for scholarship currently would be the $23,494 potential. So the intent for the OST program has been to provide a net neutral budget. The OST Elementary full-time program, it has a projected fee revenue of $297,000, with expenses at $293,826, with a direct wage cost of $252,844. So the significant is the high staff need for these models. And then we would be entering into agreements with the partnering organizations, and that would not exceed $4,000. For the OST middle school full-time program, a fee revenue of $161,460, with expenses at $160,444, with a direct wage cost of $134,572. So if the OST programs are approved tonight, then an amendment to the 2021 fee schedule will be a separate agenda item. And the fees for both programs would change should the school district begin a blended learning model. So my recommendation for you this evening is to consider and approve the temporary suspension of adult classes and allocate the use of the Jade Street Community Center for the out-of-school time OST recreation program. Consider and approve full-time elementary and middle school out-of-school time programs, which may transition to a blended learning program should Soquel Union Elementary School District transition to that model for the 2021 school year. Authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement not to exceed $4,000 in total with partnering organizations to lease additional space for OST programs. Authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management not to exceed $125,000 for a long-term vehicle rental should Soquel Union transition to a blended learning model for the 2021 school year, and adopt the proposed resolution amending the hourly seasonal pay schedule, creating 3 out-of-school time positions: the OST coordinator, the OST senior leader, and the OST leader. So that concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you, Nikki. Council members, do we have any questions? Vice Mayor Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki, for the presentation. Just one quick question. What will the grade cohorts look like for the elementary and middle school program?
So what I would currently suggest is that we would break up elementary into 2 separate groups, that we would enroll in cohorts that would go from kindergarten to 2nd grade, and then 3rd to 5th grade. And so I had originally thought that it would be like 2 classrooms for kindergarten through 2nd and 2 classrooms from 3rd through 5th. And then the remaining 2 rooms that we currently have secured would be an additional 2 middle school. I don't anticipate restricting middle school enrollment other than just the full 6th through 8th, but I would anticipate it being the majority of the 6th grade.
And Nikki, have you looked at whether or discussed, I didn't see it in the report, whether the priority would for enrollment would go to directly to folks who are considered essential workers?
Yeah, so we would be providing a priority enrollment period for essential workers as well as the Soquel Union Elementary School District teachers.
Okay, and then, sorry, I said one question, but I have one more. How would scholarships be deciphered?
So we have the summer programs. We have the Capitola Foundation reviews our scholarship applications. So independently of us, they review scholarship applications and then allocate funds to those families that's communicated to us, and we award individuals that are enrolled. And so we have reached out to that same organization and made a request for them to also take on the OST programs for the school year, and are eagerly awaiting that answer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Bertrand had his hand up next, and then we'll go to Councilmember Story.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have 2 questions. Where's the Shore Life Church? I forgot.
Yeah, Shore Life Church is actually just down the street from the school district office.
That's what I thought.
It's a Kennedy and Monterey. I'm forgetting the streets off the top of my head. I know Randy is on as an attendee right now, who is the pastor of Shore Life Church. So he could probably give you some better directions as to exactly where it is. I should also point out that school district staff are also currently on as attendees, should any other questions would be directed to them.
I thought that's what the church is. I passed by it so fast that I have a different name for it in my mind. And so being that's the church, and they're very community-minded. They also provide housing for some. They have a program on housing. I'm not sure how they choose the members that get there, but they do a lot of things for homeless community, and I think it's a great partner. So I'm very happy that you reached out to them. My daughter went to their after-school program, which is no longer in existence. They did have a regular after-schools program, so that was a great boon to the community when my daughter was at Capitola Elementary. So I'm glad you reached out to them. My second question is, and I don't want a lot of detail, I just want to get an idea. The programming, how's that devised, and where's that going to come from? You're going to have a broad section of students, either grammar or middle school. So how's that going to be dealt with?
The programming that is happening for recreational activities, if that's what you're asking about?
Yeah, how's that put together? I mean, you're recreation director, so, this is what you live and breathe. But I was just wanting to get a better idea of how that's being put together. That's all.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely still in the development phase, but we would be looking at it in much of the same way that many of the county programs that started providing for county staff or city staff, where they would have a schedule that would include the distance learning time that was spent for students, and then implementing more traditional recreation activities. And much like the after-school rec club, we drew on some STEAM activities. We tried to tap into sports and recreation activities, and then it would be figuring out what we would be able to do with the current limitations. So everything currently needs to be reviewed in order to ensure that appropriate social distancing and the materials that are involved in activities are able to be individually spaced, and all the different protocols that are required currently. So it'll take a little bit of analysis in order to identify, but I feel confident that we will still be able to, just like the camp program that we currently have, provide not only a space for youth to do their educational responsibilities and support them in lieu of working parents, and then transition to enrichment activities and homework and a nice safe space for them to be in.
Okay, I'd love to hear more about it in the future. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councilmember Story?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Nikki, this sounds like a really filling an important need for childcare with schools being partially closed. My question goes to the loss in the adult class revenue of $250,000. Assume that will be offset by equivalent expenses to, in essence, neutralize that lost revenue.
I'm not prepared to answer that question this evening. There will be, yes, there are associated expenses. We're not paying the contractors that we would typically be paying in order to provide those programs, but exactly what that is, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not sure if Jim does, or
I think I can offer that more than anything, with the decision to not have adult rec classes, which really doesn't look feasible moving forward through the first half of the year at least, there's going to be a fiscal impact because we were projecting some revenues from that. So there will be some expenditure savings as well, but I think we need to be prepared that when we get into the budget update coming up at the end of in September, that is going to be one of the hits we're going to see. Hopefully there won't be just hits, and there'll be some positives as well, but that is what we'll be looking at.
Okay, thank you.
I can give a little more detail. The adult class budget had $250,000 of revenue and about $140,000 worth of expenses. So losing adult classes is going to be something we're going to have to adjust to as we go through the year and do budget amendments.
All right, thank you. I just have one question in regard to the loss of a polling place. Have we identified any sites that could potentially supplement the polling place that we're losing? I know that there's a lot of encouragement for everyone to do vote by mail this year, but because of the circumstances surrounding the pandemic, I am concerned about the loss of the polling place. So I'm just wondering if we've looked into I don't know if the Spirit store would be out of the Sears building by 3 days after Halloween, but have we looked into any other potential sites to replace that loss of a polling place?
So in preparation for this presentation and planning this program, I reached out to the county clerk's elections office and spoke to an individual there that was identified on the letter that was sent to us. And was originally trying to identify if we would be so the current plan that they would like is to have a polling place from October 31st through November 3rd. So that is Saturday through Tuesday. And I had asked if we would be able to do part of that, and their general feeling was that it was kind of an all or none sort of thing. But because of the difference in the way that elections are going to be operated, she felt that as long as the city of Capitola had identified one single polling place, that it would be more than enough. And that was a phone conversation that I had, and no follow-up information from them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, we will bring this to public comment. I will turn it over to our moderator to let us know if there's any public comment on this item.
Mayor Peterson, I do not, oh wait, I do see, I'm sorry, someone did raise their hand. Randy Redswig, I believe. Sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the church. Our agenda is to be a help to our community, and we live here. We want to be a part of it, especially with the pandemic. And if we can help, we will do whatever we can do to be assistance. Thank you.
I do not see any other hands, and I do not see any emails regarding this item.
Okay, I see Scott Turnbull has his hand up. It looks like he's over in the panelist section now. Scott, are you looking to provide public comment?
Public comment, if that's acceptable.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
We would just like to say from Soquel Union Elementary School District how appreciative we are of the support of the City Council and the city, and specifically Nikki Bryant, who has really reached out to us. And one of the things we really appreciate is that she has listened and tried to understand our need. Need for childcare in our area, I think, has always been a challenge, and never more so than it is right now, as we have had to toggle back and forth between a hybrid learning model and a distance learning model. So we're just very appreciative in our district that the city and the city really walks the walk when it comes to supporting families. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no additional public comment, I will bring it back to council for discussion and a vote. I see Councilmember Bottorff has his hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to second the comments that Scott Turnbull mentioned about how Nikki and the city stepped up on this project. You know, a lot of things we do are repeat programs that we do year after year. And this was truly a case where we had to reinvent the wheel. And to do it in such a short time frame, and the presentation that I saw seems like it dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. Nikki, I just want to commend you on a great job, and I look forward to seeing this plan implemented, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bottorff. Vice Mayor Brooks?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what everyone has been saying. I first want to say thank you to Randy and Scott for opening their doors to this program. When I was elected in 2018, one of my priorities was to start securing and help create programs that would support our families. And during this pandemic, it really has highlighted that there are many, many families in our community that really are in need of support, especially right now. And Nikki, you championing and filling this kind of vision inside of my head really, really makes me happy and proud to be a council member and to be able to work with you. So thank you so much. This, as you know, I work for the County Office of Education. I sit on the Child Advisory Committee and the Children's Network, and every day I'm hearing what these needs are. And so we're going to be filling just a very small void, and I hope to see that these programs continue to grow if need be, should the distance learning continue and or the second model. So with that, I would like to make a motion to pass the recommended actions proposed by staff tonight.
And I'll second that. And I have some comments too.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Bertrand, go ahead.
Now, I read early on how Nikki approached setting up programs, and one of the things that impressed me when she first started was she reached out to and made a pretty good assessment of what's out in the community. What are the options that we could collaborate with? what are the needs. You know, I was very impressed on how she approached the start of her job here in Capitola. And I think this is a product of that. And working with the school district, working with the community life down the street on Monterey, I think is just the beginning. And thank you very much for doing this. And as our vice mayor said, this fills a major need, but it's a need that we're starting to address, which we really haven't done as fully as we have in the past, as we should have been doing in the past. Of course, we do junior guards, but I think we're expanding quite a bit more in regards to our commitment to the community, in regards to the youth in the community. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Councilmember Bertrand. Seeing no further council comments, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilmember Bertrand.
Definitely, yes.
Councilmember Botorff.
Aye.
Councilmember Story.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brooks.
Aye.
Mayor Peterson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 7D, consider an amended fee schedule for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me share my screen with you here. Okay, so this next item is an amendment to the fee schedule that's in relation to the item that you just heard on the outside of school time program. Just by way of background, we review the fee schedule each year as part of our budget process, and our current fiscal year 2021 fee schedule was adopted by Council on June 11th. Since that time, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are we supposed to be seeing your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we don't see, there's nothing on the screen share. Apologies for the interruption.
No, I'm glad you did. Let me try this again. What happened last time? Is that better?
Still don't see anything.
What?
It's possible Larry needs to give you permission there.
Share on both sides. It's not. Yeah, don't share both sides. Huh? Don't do that. Okay, Larry's going to grab this for me.
Sure, no problem.
Not sure what's going on.
That's pretty much the motto of this entire year, though, isn't it? Not sure what's going on.
Jim, I can run it from here.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. We can see it now.
Okay, so current fee schedule was adopted June 11th of this year, and since that time, as Nikki just mentioned, they've developed the out-of-school time program for both elementary and middle school students. So, next slide, please. So by way of revenue, Nikki touched on this a little bit. I'll just drill down a little bit more to explain how we got to the fees that we're proposing this evening. So revenues across the top for each program, elementary $297, middle school $161,000, a little bit over, for a total of $458. Expenditures, I think Nikki gave you the total in her presentations, but it breaks out into personnel, contract services, training and memberships, and supplies, as you see on the screen. So what we tried to do, what Nikki and I tried to do, was allocate direct expenses into the months in which they will occur. So, for example, snacks are $2 a day. We know how many days, how many students in each month, so we allocate that directly to that month. General training, I think we have $2,000, 10-month program, that's allocated $200 a month. And then that way we were able to develop a fee, a daily fee that is the same within each program, regardless of the number of days in the month. Next slide, please. So for the elementary school, you can see that the proposed resident fee is $34 a day, and the non-resident fee is $43 per day. And then the monthly total will vary from month to month based on the number of days the program will operate within those given months. So August and December are the same. They both operate 14 days, and then you can see each month and how many days for each one. And then we also have a late pickup fee that we're proposing of $1 per minute, which is consistent with our after-school program that we normally run. Next slide, please. One too many. For the middle school, the resident fee we're proposing is $37 a day, and non-resident fee $46 a day. And that follows, I should have mentioned this on the last slide, the non-resident fee is typically 25% higher than the resident fee, and that's consistent throughout our whole fee schedule. And then again, the monthly fees for each program is dependent upon the number of days within each of those months. But what we wanted was something that was the same on a daily basis for each of the students, rather than one month it's $20 a day and the next month it's $40 a day. Next slide, please. So that's actually all I have on the fees. Nikki already has covered the entire program. So our staff's recommendation is to conduct the public hearing tonight and adopt the proposed resolution adopting the amended fee schedule. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from council members? Councilmember Story. Do you have a question, Councilmember Story?
I do. Sorry, it just took me a minute to get to the right screen. Jim, in the list of expenditures, I noticed that there's no line item for indirect or overhead expenses. I just wanted to ask about that, and is that being absorbed through the general fund?
The way we do our recreation budget, and Nikki and I have talked about this a little bit, is we don't charge overhead to any of the programs. We budget revenues and expenditures exclusive to just that program. The OST programs will not generate any additional overhead. The overhead that we have is there whether this program goes on or not, if that makes sense to you.
It does.
Can I also just want to chime in a little bit on that. So the direction I gave Nikki as we were setting up this program was to make sure that the program itself was revenue neutral. The challenge with these programs for youth right now is they're incredibly expensive because of the restrictions around coronavirus. They just become very difficult to put on. And so our goal was to keep it revenue neutral. That is, putting on the program wasn't going to put us in a worse place than we were before, but at the same time do our best to keep the cost down as low as possible. So for example, historically with our junior guard program, we have used revenue from the junior guard program to fund some of the overhead for the department. We weren't able to do that this year because of the requirements about the increased staff ratios, the fewer children, everything else. Same thing here. So the bad news is that we're not being able to fund the back of house costs. The good news, though, is we're being able to provide this very needed service in the community.
I consider that a worthy trade-off. Thank you.
Councilmember Bertrand.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, maybe you can answer this question, or maybe Nikki. What's a comparable price that similar programs might charge, or maybe there's nothing that we can compare it to? I'm just trying to get an idea of 34, where does this fit in the normal scheme of things?
I'm going to defer to Nikki on that one because I don't think there are any other programs exactly like this in existence right now.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. This is a completely new idea of providing program to school age youth. Honestly, the best comparison that I have is to preschool. And I mean, I could tell you, I personally paid like $70 a day. So that, as far as what we're doing, it's a completely new thing. And the programs that are in existence across the county that started in April were were funded from lots of different sources. So there isn't really any kind of history in order to go off of. So the method that Jim and I set out was trying to identify a fair fee that, with Jamie's direction of how we needed to do it for the budget.
Thank you. Okay.
I just have a quick question about the late pickup fee. Does that go into program revenue? Or does that go directly to the provider that was there late?
It goes to program revenue.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, we'll open this item for public comment, and I'll turn it over to Larry to moderate our public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. I do not see any hand raised in the Zoom meeting, and I do not see any emails regarding this issue, or this item, excuse me.
All right. With that, we'll bring it back to council for a discussion and a vote. Councilmember Bertrand. You're on mute still, Councilmember Bertrand.
I keep trying to. I move that we adopt the proposed resolution amending the fee schedule for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Bertrand.
Yes.
Councilmember Botsworth.
Aye.
Councilmember Story.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brooks.
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to the final item of the night. Consider an approval of contract change order number 8 for the Capitola Branch Library project. I'll turn it over to staff for a report.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen. I hope so. Mayor and Council, the item before you tonight is a change order number 8 for the Capitola Branch Library project. Per our change order policy, any change order over $50,000 needs council approval. We've had 7 change orders for that. All have not needed council approval, but have been reported out at various times during the project. A little background on the reason for this change order is in April of last year, conflicts between the building that's being built and the power lines along Wharf Road was identified. We went through various design iterations, looked at undergrounding, the costs were too prohibitive, and been working with PG&E for the last several months, and PG&E has designed a project to relocate the wires away from the building as part of providing a new electrical service connection for the building. So they've kind of combined it into 2. City signed a contract with PG&E earlier this month to complete the removal of the wires and provide the service connection for $1,500. We are currently waiting for PG&E to schedule construction. As far as our contract with Auto Construction is the general contractor on the project, originally had an ending date that they had to meet of February of this year. That was extended to May due to weather. They cannot be compensated for delays caused by weather. So the current contract schedule calls for completion of May 6, 2020, which was honestly a couple months ago. As we neared that date, we've been working with Auto to identify their costs that they're going to have to incur due to delays that are not at a fault of theirs. So contract change order number 8 extends the contract through June 20th, which again has already occurred, but Otto is continuing to work, but it compensates them for those 6 weeks between May 6th and June 20th. Once PG&E's schedule is known, we'll be able to accurately predict when the project will be able to be completed, and we will prepare another change order to extend it to that date. This time we're estimating that to be December of this year. So looking at contract change order number 8, it's the first claim we've received for delay costs with conflicts with power lines. The amount of the change order request is $120,688. Of that, $111,789 is for the extension of the contract. That's that 6 weeks we're extending it. And these are for costs that Otto is having to incur, such as insurance costs, overhead costs, site management costs that they aren't covered in pay items that are in the project, like completing the roof or putting the HVAC system in. These are costs that for them to manage the project, to be on site and keep working. An additional $8,900 of the work is related to changes in the roof structure that will require additional work from them. In this case, it's they had to modify the roof trusses to eliminate the overhang on the roof along Wharf Road because it would have been in conflict with power lines. Once the power lines are moved, then they will come back and add that overhang. Just to clarify, Otto can claim costs for delays that are caused by the city or design errors and changes. So they're not eligible, like I said, if it rains, they're not eligible for delay costs. If it's delays caused by them, it'll cause them to go beyond the contract dates, then that is not something they're eligible for. But these delays clearly are something that we feel they are eligible for reimbursement for. So our recommendation tonight is to approve contract change order number 8, the amount of $120,688 for additional project costs related to the conflict with PG&E power lines. That's the end of my report, and we do have Dave Tanza in attendance tonight, who is our project manager and is available to help with any questions you may have.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any questions from council members? This up for public comment. Turn it over to Larry.
I don't see any attendees with their hands up, and I don't make sure I have the right one. I do not see anyone with emails on this item.
Okay. With that, we will close public comment and bring it back to council. I see Councilmember Bertrand has his hand up.
Yeah, Dave stayed for this whole meeting. I'd kind of like to see if he had anything to say. I appreciate him being online, and unfortunately, it was the last item on the agenda. So, and if you have any illumination about how PG&E has acted or not acted, that would be interesting also.
I hate to keep you there for another hour to talk about PG&E.
Oh, please don't.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I don't know if you recall when we bid the project, Otto bid all the bidders bid their daily rate for compensable delay, which they're entitled to use for delay claims, and that was about $2,500 a day. And through negotiations and their willingness to, work with us on this project, this change order represents about $2,000 a day. So they're working with us. They're not taking advantage of the situation. And so I just want to mention that they've been really great to work with.
Thanks for that. That's good to know. It really is.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all the effort. Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bottorff, a second by Councilmember Bertrand. Any comments? None. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Councilmember Bertrand.
Aye.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Aye.
Councilmember Story.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brooks.
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Before we wrap up our meeting, it was an oversight on my part to not request a report out on the closed session. So let's do that briefly, and then we will adjourn our meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Closed session was held on the 4 items on the agenda, and no action was taken. Direction was given to staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we've come to the end of tonight's agenda. Thank you all so much for your participation and for the public comments we received tonight. Thank you for staff, as always, for all your hard work on this. Please take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Goodbye.